Football here with on another episode of Protect the Boot, joined here always by my co-host Jace LeJeune. But we also have a very special guest today. We have Jerit Roser of Louisiana versus all y'all here to talk about the upcoming playoffs. A lot of talented teams, a lot of great players, a lot of great coaches as well. And I think we're all really excited about the playoffs. So, Jace, what are your initial thoughts about the next 4 or 5 weeks?
Oh, it's gonna be fun. I mean, it's really my favorite part of the year. I know it's Jared's favorite part of the year too. When we get brackets and when we get matchups, and it's win or go home for these guys. And high school football is just the purest form of football out there, and it's just something different about having win or go home game in front of every pretty much small town out there in Louisiana. I mean, they pretty much really shut the town down just for the playoff game on Friday night. So looking forward to it. Every kid's dream is to play in the Superdome. So, and it's great that all these teams get a chance to go back to the Superdome and play as well. But I'm super excited. It's my favorite part of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Jared, what about you?
No doubt. I mean, everything Jace was saying, I look at bracket release Sunday as almost like the Wednesday before Thanksgiving or like December 23rd, and you get off work and you kind of have the plans laid out and you're just waiting to get to the feast or the presents or whatever of the Superdome. And I have been super excited to have all the games back in the Superdome. As much as we saw some great ones in some other locations, I think there is something special about being in that stadium for these kids. And I like kind of a further consolidation of some of these brackets the last couple of years. I'm glad it stuck that way to get some interesting matchups that we'll see over the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, and I think this is the second year in a row we're going to have all the games in the Dome. But not only that, this is the second straight year of the select, non-select divisions. And even though it might not be the most ideal thing, it's probably the best thing we've had since before the split. So I think everyone's really happy where Louisiana football is going. But let's go to the brackets. Let's
get into it, Grant. I'm excited.
No doubt.
Like open Christmas presents.
Let's start off with Division 4 non-select. So there's a non-select and select. I'm not really going to get into what kind of qualifies for non-select and select, but let's list all the teams because there's talent regardless, no matter if it's non-select or select. So let's go into the Division 4 non-select. The first seed, as it was announced, is Logansport. They will have a bye. The second seed was Kentwood. They were originally the 1 seed for a very long time before they ended up losing to their district rival, Southern Lab. They're in Division 4 Select, actually. For the number 3 seed, we have Oak Grove, who is the defending Division 4 non-select state champions. They also have a bye. Division for the number 4 seed, you have Haynesville, who was in the semifinals last year before losing against Oak Grove. The number 5 seed, you have Jerit, who's kind of shocked a few people, Jace and Jared. They also have a very talented tight end.
They do.
And Javel Frederick.
Yep, that's it.
I think he's committed to Tulane, if not mistaken. Number 6, you have Maynham, who's kind of made his way back into the forefront. They will take on Lakeview, and as I mentioned, Generic will take on West St. John.
Sure.
And at number 7, you have Homer, who's the defending runner-ups. They will face the 26th seed Delhi.
Yeah.
Is it Delhi? Yeah. And then number 20, and then for number 8, you have Welsh, who will take on Brazil.
Brazil. Yep.
Yeah, some of these Louisiana names sometimes like Iowa.
Iowa. It took me a while to figure that one out too.
So yeah, what are your initial thoughts about this bracket? And, who you think is going to win this bracket, and then also who should we watch it for?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of really the familiar names. I mean, Jared's pretty familiar with a lot of these names at the very top. I mean, Logansport, Kentwood, Oak Grove. I mean, even you look at number 4 seed Haynesville. I mean, there's a lot of state championships between those 4 teams. So not too much of a surprise with really the top 4. Kentwood has had. I mean, that's definitely a team to watch out for. I mean, Coach Foster does a really good job over there. Really a lot of talent pretty much year in, year out. And really their only 2 losses came against Southern Lab and a 5A team in Walker. So, pretty good resume there. I'm really intrigued by the bomb side of the bracket, to be honest with you, because, I mean, if things are shaping up the way it looks, I mean, Kentwood and Oak Grove, that's like a state championship game, and that could definitely be a semifinal matchup. And in my opinion, I think whoever really comes out of that game is going to end up winning the state championship. So I have Oak Grove win just because, I mean, Jackson Bradley's for another year, and it's very valuable to have a starting quarterback back who's had so much experience. So and Ryan Gregory, all they've done was win when he's been the head coach. So give me Oak Grove for sure. But there are some teams that you have to watch out in here, like Welsh is definitely a team to keep an eye out for. Jerit, I know their tight end, he's really good, and he's actually not a name that a lot of people get to really recognize. So he could be a guy to really watch out for this playoff bracket. I'm sure Jared's going to talk about that. But I mean, as far as like winning it all, I really like Oak Grove, and as far as maybe a sleeper team to watch out for, yeah, I'm going to go with Jerit as far as a team that kind of keep an eye on, as far as a name that's maybe not the big four powerhouse names that we have in the Division IV non-select bracket.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you just said. I look at even as a 3 seed, not that it's a low seed, but it's below Logansport and Kentwood. Oak Grove is my favorite to win it, to go win it again. They started 1-2. Which is fine. They started worse last season and rolled.
It was like 0-4, Jared?
I don't remember what it was exactly, but I know they had a losing record kind of early to mid-season last year and were an 8 seed and rolled their way right to a state championship. And a lot of the key pieces of that team are back, battle-tested. You mentioned Jackson Bradley. And the list goes on with James Harris and JT Layton and company. And so Oak Grove Tigers know what it takes to make a deep playoff run and bring trophies back up to the northeast corner of the state. And that's my favorite. That Kentwood semifinal is going to be one of the games I'm most intrigued if we ultimately get that. You don't see in recent years a lot of upsets in this bracket. There was one upset last season. I think it was an 18-15. There was only one upset in the second round. And so you get a lot of chalk to at least the quarterfinals. And that's why we start to expect these top 4 teams, particularly with the benefit of a bye and then a guaranteed second round home game, to advance. I do like some of these other teams, Jerit with Treville and some of the other talented members of that team. Dominic Lewis is another guy that I really like on that roster. But I think the top 4 teams are going to be the ones we're looking at come semifinal time. And at that point, you get a rematch of a really memorable Logansport and Haynesville state championship from a few years back, maybe a few years more than I'm giving it credit for at this point, but I think those kids growing up in those communities kind of know the deal if it does come to that point and they see each other in the semis. And so, yeah, I think that semifinal round is going to be where things potentially get a little haywire for me, but Oak Grove is the team I think comes out on top of all of this.
Yeah, and I agree with you guys there. I actually picked Oak Grove as well. I think they're returning a lot of talent from last year, including Jackson Bradley, who I think is the player to watch in these playoffs. And then they also have a fantastic coach in Ryan Greger, who is just a plain winner. And he's had a lot of success there as of late. And I think Oak Grove is going to win the whole thing. But I think a team that people may seem to forget about is Homer. Even the runner-ups. I mean, that if everything works out, you have a quarterfinal matchup between them and Kentwood. And I think that they will be the spoiler for Kentwood. And as talented as Kentwood is, Homer's just as talented. So I think that's another game you need to watch out for in these brackets. And in Haynesville, I think they will also make the other end of the bracket in the dome. I don't think they'll beat Oak Grove because, Oak Grove showed early in the year that they are probably the best team in these playoffs. But yeah, I think I'm very excited for this. These playoffs right here in Division IV non-select, live talent. And there's a lot of schools you may not ever heard of before, Even though, like, these schools, we know these schools, we don't know how good these schools are because they're just on the smaller end of the spectrum. But these are all very competitive games. But yeah, moving on to Division IV Select, there's a lot of great teams in this one, and I think it's one of the more stacked playoffs that we have. The first seed is Vermilion Catholic, who was the runner-ups last year. This is the second year in a row that they are the number 1 seed in Division IV Select. Then at the number 2 seed, you have Southern Lab, who we just mentioned earlier. They are a very talented team, and they've been one of the harder teams in the state so far. Number 3, you have Washington Christian, who is the defending Division IV Select champions. At number 4, you have St. Martin's Episcopal, who has one of the best running backs in the country, if not the best running back in the country, for the class of 2025 in Harlan Berry. Number 5, you have Riverside, who actually beat St. Martin's in the regular season, and they gave them their only loss, and they have a lot of talent there as well. At the number 6 spot, you have St. Mary's, who has some talent there as well. Don't forget about them. 7, you have St. Frederick's up in Monroe. And for the number 8 seed, you have Opelousas Catholic, who is another sleeper team you need to watch out for. And they also have a lot of talent. Also the alma mater of Keon Coleman.
That's right. That's right.
So, what are some matchups you guys are looking for out of this bracket? Who you think will be the sleeper team of this bracket? And then also who you think will win?
Yeah, I mean, as far as like early matchups, I know we're going to really pay a lot of attention to the quarterfinals and the semifinals. But in the second round, a matchup I'm very intrigued by is Opelousas Catholic and Ascension Catholic. Just because Ascension Catholic with Chad Elzy and what he's been doing this year at the running back position, Opelousas Catholic they're led by Mark Collins at the quarterback position, a Raging Cajun baseball commit. That is going to be probably a lot of offense being scored in that football game. So like high scoring shootouts. As far as early round games, that is definitely a game to definitely keep an eye out on. But I mean, as far as like talking about deep in the playoff brackets and everything, I think it's just going to really set up to be what it was last year. It was a rematch with could be a rematch between OCS and Vermilion Catholic. I really like both those two teams playing against each other. Now, Southern Lab is, I mean, as far as athletes are concerned, just talent. Southern Lab may be the most talented team in this bracket, so they're always, just with that alone, they're going to definitely be in the run for it. That should be a great semifinal game if everything lines up with OCS and Southern Lab on the bottom side of it. And you look at the top side, I really like Vermilion Catholic, led by D'Artes. Very, very fun player to watch, just see him run the football. And you look at also the top side. I mean, obviously the player that everybody's going to keeping their eye on is Harlan Berry and see what he does. And he really put the team on his back last year on a deep playoff run. So as far as a player to keep an eye on, he's definitely that guy. But as far as the state championship, I like Washita Christian. Just like how they're just built, obviously, with their head football coach, Coach Fitzhugh, and all the success he's had. And, I mean, they just go to the Dome pretty much like every year. So they've been there a lot. And I do like Vermilion Catholic as well. So expect that rematch in the state championship. But I'm going to go with Washita Christian to get a repeat. I really like Washita Christian and Coach Fitzhugh and all the talent. Tate Hamby as well, wide receiver, the Vanderbilt commit. So give me the Eagles to come out of that one.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Jared?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that, again, that I agree with. I am glad that I get to disagree in some spots on this one because we were pretty all in sync on the Division IV non-select side. OCS, to me, is probably the favorite to go back and win again. That's a team that was competing with and beating handily 5A competition up in Monroe. I think that side of the bracket, what stands out to me is both OCS and St. Fred's, their district rival, have some really nice postseason history with Southern Lab, and we might get both of those games in back-to-back weeks. So it'll be interesting to see how some of that falls. I'm not sure if new LSU baseball commit William Patrick for St. Fred's rejoined the football team recently. That was some talk after he got the baseball commitment out of the way that he might come back, and he's a hell of a football player too. Had some college offers on that side of things. Louisiana Tech, I know, was a big one for him on the football recruiting side. And so how some of those matchups fall, yesterday I gave a little shout out to a couple of people in the first round, Reagan Smith taking over that Glenbrook program and having them in the playoffs. Really excited to see what they can do. They get a chance to host a home game. St. Edmund, a team that I really wanted to see this year, to go see Kevon Johnson, but haven't had a chance to, and they get a rematch with Westminster Christian. The top half, I'm not as sure. I like Vermilion Catholic a lot. That's a team that has key pieces back. You mentioned Jonathan D'Artes, second straight regular season. They go undefeated and get to be the number 1 seed in this, and they get the benefit, in my opinion, of avoiding OCS and Southern Lab until at least the Dome. But that Ascension Catholic team is a 9 seed, I think has capability to make a Dome run. that Riverside team as a 5 seed, I really like. Harlem Berry, you mentioned for St. Martin's, he's my top player in the 2025 class, and so I wouldn't be surprised to see the top half of that bracket, as much as Vermilion Catholic is the favorite, get a little bit haywire. And this is one of the brackets I have filled out a little bit more completely already. And I think I'm taking a shot on Riverside to make a dome run.
I like that.
And so, come from a 5 seed and pull a couple upsets. I won't be surprised if I'm wrong, because VC is a hell of a football team, and as some of the others on this side of the bracket are. But that's one that I'm starting to kind of take my shot on for an upset run.
Yeah, and Grant, you were actually at that first game with St. Martin's and Riverside, and so was Jerit.
Yeah.
So y'all are able to see in person how impressive Riverside really is, because I know a lot of the headlines was on Harlem Berry that football game.
exactly.
And Dedrick Lasty stole the show.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I think, kind of going to the, looking at the bracket, I think, like I agree with you, Jace, that Opelousas Catholic, it's such a Catholic game, will look mighty nice. I think whoever wins that game could play spoiler, and I don't think Vermilion Catholic will make it past the quarterfinals. I think, I think the winner of Opelousas Catholic and such a Catholic could beat them.
I can see that too.
I think there's a lot of chaos in this bracket, to be honest with you. Like, Catholic Point could beat Riverside, but I think Riverside will make a push towards the dome. I think that's another game you should watch out for. Delta, I think the thing is, as much as we talk about St. Mark's Episcopal, Delta Charter could probably upset them in the second round. Jafari Singleton is a hell of a player. He may not be the biggest guy in the world, but he's a ball player. He was actually one of our. I think he was a runner-up for Player of the Week.
Yeah, he was up there, Jafari Singleton.
Yeah. Yep. So also the coach has really said some nice things about us covering them. I'm not saying that because we've been covering them. I'm saying that because I look at St. Martin's Episcopal. If they slow down Harlem Berry just a little bit, St. Mark's can't really do anything about it. They're not. They just relies too much on Harlem Berry for them to make it to the dome. As great as Harlem Berry is, that Riverside game really kind of exposed St. Martin's a little bit. And Riverside, they have one of the better offensive linemen in the country. I know they lost one of their better offensive linemen. Jared, do you happen to remember his name? Because I know he committed to Southeastern. Well, I know he's the other guy who committed. He's a really talented player, but they still have been really consistent. Amari Alexander is one of the better offensive linemen in the state. He is a Southeastern commit, and that's right. And he's been a huge force for their rushing attack. And Dijik Lasty.
We got Darren Sproles, almost.
He's smaller than Sarah Sproles.
Yeah.
He's like 5'3".
Yeah.
And he's rushing for like 250 yards a game. He's the leading rusher out of the New Orleans area, and that's saying a lot because there's a lot of talent in terms of running backs out of the New Orleans area. So I think they're gonna be a force to be reckoned with. But to be honest with you, I don't see Washington Christian making it back to the dome.
Okay.
I really like the Southern Lab team because they've been really hot as of late. They've shown that they can be the best team, one of the best teams in Division IV Select, non-select or select. And I think that the state championship game will come down to Southern Lab and Riverside, and I take Southern Lab.
Okay. Yeah, so a little bit different from mine there, so I like that.
Just to make sure we give that man his flowers from last year's line class, Alex Ross from Riverside was the senior last year. And then, as you mentioned, Amiri, kind of the big name up front this year.
It's hard to miss him.
Yeah, exactly, right.
It's very hard to miss him.
But yeah, moving on to Division III. Division III non-select. It's a lot of big time names out of here. I think Gina, as we may well know, is the number 1 seed in that class. They have one of the best running backs in the state with
Zerick Jones.
Zerick Jones, yeah. Yep. Fantastic running back. He is he committed to the bowl game.
Yeah, he's going to play in the bowl game.
Gridiron All-American Bowl game on December 30th. And then from there you have Sterlington, who's been one of the powers in the state. They just capped off the season with their 5th district title since 2017, so they're rolling. And I think they've been a 2-time state champion. As in the last 10 years. Yeah,
they've won the state championship 2 years ago, and they beat Trey Holly when Trey Holly was a junior. 2 years ago. So
I think they won one in 2015 too.
They beat Madison Prep
Goal line stand.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, so 3-4 time. Yeah, so they've been one of the better teams in this state. St. James, very talented team as well. They can make a push towards the Union Parish. Very familiar. We're all very familiar with this Union Parish team. 2-time runner-ups, and they hope to finish off the season with a state championship in their trophy cabinet. Number 5, you have Bogalusa, and even though you may look at their record and be like, "Whoa, I don't know how good this team is." They played some really tough opponents, and that's the reason why they're the 5th seed. I mean, they've always played up, so they're not afraid to play anybody, and they're not afraid to beat you either. Number 6, you have Manning, who's the defending champion, Division III Non-Select. Number 7, you have one of the biggest shockers in the state in Pine.
Yeah.
And then number 8 you have the 8th seed. You have Amite, who, I mean, we're all very familiar with Amite. They've had some great talent come out of there, including Devontae Smith, who is right now an All-Pro receiver for the Eagles and was the Heisman Trophy winner at Alabama during the 2020 season. So, what do you guys like about this bracket? Who do you think is the favorite to win this bracket? Who's a sleeper? And who are some players that we may need to look out for that we may have never heard of before?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's some big names in this bracket. I mean, Tylen Singleton from Manny. I mean, that's a name everybody's going to be talking about. At the LSU commit, but there's some pretty good teams on here. I mean, Gina, just talk about just the season they've had this year. Coach Jerit Roser has done an excellent job this year with his team. You already mentioned Jerit Jones, and really they got a lot of really good playmakers on that football team. So really good season for the Gina Giants, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do as like the number 1 seed for the first time. So I'm looking forward to see how they do that and how they approach that. As far as like Amite being a number 8 seed, that's definitely something to look out for, because with Coach Powell's football team, they got athletes and they're pretty big up front. So that's going to be a tough matchup for anybody that's going to go against them on the top side of the bracket. Bogalusa, Ashton Levi is a name to watch out for. I mean, he's a senior quarterback, has set so many records in Coach Crutchfield's offense. So that's going to be a name to watch out for as far as him maybe just putting his stamp on that program and maybe getting a pretty good playoff run. And then when you look at the bottom side of the bracket, actually one more thing on the top side of the bracket, Union Parish. Everybody's just talking about, oh yeah, they don't have Trey Holly anymore, and it's going to be hard to replace him. But really, Island, their running back, Jamar Island, has done a great job filling in his place. They got a running back. They always got running backs, and they're going to still run the football. It's not going to change their identity. And Coach Spatafore has done an excellent coaching job this year. So I got to give him a shout out. But at the bottom side of the bracket, Sterlington is actually the team I have coming out of this bracket. They've just been a veteran football team. When you talk about just punch you in the mouth, win on offense, defense, they play complementary football. They play the style of football that's going to help you win a lot of games. When you're talking about cold, wet weather, when it matters in the playoffs. So I'm going to go with Sterlington to come out. I mean, as far as the team, I can probably give them a lot of problems. Keep an eye on that Pine team. That Pine football team is really good. James Owens is the running back. He's had a really good season. And really, Coach Seal's done an excellent job with that program. Pretty big up front. That could be a team that can make some noise. But obviously, St. James. That could obviously be a semifinal matchup with Sterlington. St. James, they're just so big up front. The quarterback's a veteran quarterback. You talk about Kobe James, right? Kobe Brown.
Yeah.
That's right. Kobe Brown, a wide receiver. Brandon Williams. So,
and they got some big offensive linemen,
big some offensive linemen. They got 6'8". We got a 6'8" tackle, right?
Yeah.
So, they got some big names. But I'm going to go as far as the state championship is concerned. I'm going chalk here. I know I'm going chalk a lot in this bracket so far, but I'm actually really liking that Gina Sterlington team. I think it's just a team this year in Gina that they're just built. This is like their year, and I really like this Gina football team with Jerit Jones and just a veteran core. But I'm gonna give me the Sterlington Panthers though to win it out. Just love what Coach Lido is doing over there, and I give me the Sterlington Panthers. I really like them this year.
Yeah, I haven't locked in quite as much on these further brackets the deeper we go, but I do like the teams that you mentioned quite a bit. I think in my first draft running through this, I look at Gina, potentially Bogalusa, Sterlington, and St. James as my likeliest semifinalist, and kind of how it goes from there. And I think Sterlington is the direction that I'm leaning so far as a state champion, but haven't completely locked in. The thing that stands out to me about this bracket is there are so many interesting spots for rematches, whether it be from last year's playoffs or recent games. That Jewel Sumner team that just beat Amite to close out the regular season might be a second-round matchup. Caldwell Parish and Richwood is a 16-17 rematch of last year's 16-17 game that Caldwell won 12-8. And there's a few more in here eluding me, but as the brackets fall, there's some potential for a lot of familiar, potentially feisty matchups if it shakes out right. And so we'll see how some of that goes. Y'all mentioned a lot of these teams. I like Wood Marksville as another lower seed. The season they've had. Pine, one of those big offensive linemen, Jackson Jones, is rapidly rising up.
Yeah, that's a good name.
2025 rankings. That Manny team is a 6 seed. Has as much top-end talent as anyone with Tylen, but also Swayze Carhill, a Power 5 recruit for the 24 class. Jeremiah James, the running back.
He's been there for a long time.
Yeah, I remember Jeremiah coming to a camp, a group of us put on up in Shreveport, trying to kind of shake back from COVID and get some more film out there, and he really impressed me then as a youngster, and so it's crazy that he's now a senior. Xavier McLaughlin, Tut McLaughlin at North Webster now for his senior year. Kin to Devin White, had played his first 3 years at Calvary Baptist and has transferred back, doing what I've expected him to do from a defensive back standpoint, but has played a bigger role offensively this year for that team as well. And so it's been fun to see some things kind of open up for him. Laurelville has a guy in the trenches, Dylan Singleton, that I haven't seen in person, but just kind of liked some of the first clips I saw of him. And so I saw them a little bit in 7-on-7, where obviously Big Dylan's not running around catching passes, but they had a nice showing at the Cajun 7-on-7 tournament this summer. You mentioned Ashton with Bogalusa as a team who I think has a chance to make a small upset over Union Parish in a quarterfinal game if we get there. Donaldsonville with Juicy Otis back healthy the last couple weeks as a team that missed him for a lot of the season, then had that game that they were leading become a no contest 2 weeks ago, and so that's a team that I think could have been a little bit higher if all healthy and had their complete game in week 9, if not for the shooting incident that unfortunately we see happening way too much on Friday nights around the state now.
Yeah.
And so a lot of potentially interesting matchups, but I have kind of zeroed in, I think, on a Gina Bogalusa semifinal, and then that great St. James team versus a great Sterlington team.
Yeah,
and the winner of that one probably being my state champion.
Yeah, and there's a lot of some pretty good teams in this playoffs right here in Division III Non-Select. I think it's gonna be Gina and Sterlington in the finals, but there's gonna be some spoilers in here. Watch out for Bogalusa. They might make some noise in this. I think they could make a quarterfinal run. They could upset Union Parish, even though I probably think Union Parish will win that game.
It's just a tough road.
It's a tough road.
It's a tough road.
Amy's at 8. I mean, that's a very tough matchup for anybody. I mean, we just saw Amy and Charlotte go head-to-head, and Amy almost won that game.
Yeah.
So Amy's a team you should watch out for. I think Amy could beat Gina. Amy, their coaching staff has been there before. Gina, this is the first time really being this good
that's my
long
biggest
time.
concern about Gina.
I mean, and the thing is, the only reason why people kind of heard about Gina was through Jerit Jenkins, because we know he's from Gina and he reps Gina pretty proudly. So this is the first time we ever heard Gina actually just being this good. So the fact that Gina kind of came out of nowhere, and we don't know how they're going to handle these type of moments.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a really tough side of the bracket, and even if they beat Amy, they might have to play either Union Parish or Bogalusa. And Union Parish, obviously, Coach Spadafora, he's been to this dome multiple times, including the last 2 years. And then also Bogalusa.
You're going to beat up, win or lose.
Yeah.
You're going to get some bruises.
And then let's say Bogalusa makes it to the semifinals. Bogalusa is coached by Coach Cyril Crutchfeld. I mean, he's a fantastic coach as well. He's a state champion coach too.
Yeah.
So a lot of coaching talent in that top half of the bracket. But I think I'm going to give it to Sterlington. I think they're going to be. I think the winner of the St. James Sterlington game will be state champion. I'm going to edge that to Sterlington. Coach Doty's been there before. He's got a great line that's led by
TCU commit.
TCU commit Hamish Hodnett, and they have two fantastic backs in Devin Downs and Trammell Colvin, who I think is one of the bigger sleepers in the state.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of those rematches I might have missed was Meat is who knocked Gina out a year ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If we get that in a quarter, that's going to be a game that certainly the folks up in Gina remember all too well.
And who knows, like A-Meat, if they somehow beat Gina and they work their way, they could potentially meet Sterlington again in the state championship. You never know.
Talked about after that game is they hope to see each other again and hoped it was on Poydras. There's certainly potential that falls true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's move on to Division III Select. I think this is the one we've all been kind of waiting for. A lot of great teams. I think this is probably the most stacked playoffs we had this year. And the number 1 seed is St. Charles, of course, the 2-time defending state champion.
Yeah.
I think they've won like 20 straight games and whatnot. They're also coming off a huge win over Newman, where they shut them out 28-0, and I think that shocked a lot of people. At number 2, you have a very talented Calvary Baptist team, who I've said is maybe the top team in the state, regardless of classification, pound for pound, because of the amount of talent they have on both sides. At number 3, you have Newman, who I just mentioned. I think this is probably the most talented Newman team we've seen ever, and you're also very physical, which is something you don't really see out a lot of Newman teams. Number 4, you have U-High, one of the most talented teams in this state. They have 2, 3, 5-star guys with obviously next year with Keelan Moses.
The guy one more Brown.
A younger brother of
Dylan
Moses, who went to Alabama, and then also Lamar Brown, who's one of the top prospects of 2026 in the top 10. And then at number 5, you have Catholic New Iberia. And they seem to be a pretty solid team. They've had some marquee wins, including over a very pretty good Parkview Baptist team. Number 6, you have Bunkie, who's been kind of one of the surprise teams this year. They have a very talented team over there. Number 7, you have Dunham. Dunham's led by their freshman quarterback, who's maybe a 5-star quarterback by his senior year. I mean, 6'4", 200 pounds, and it'd be hard for you to believe that he's a freshman, because he's just that big, and he's very mature too. And then number 8, you have DeAubron Woods Charter, who's in the same district as Calvary Baptist, who handed them the first loss of the year.
Coach Thorpe's the head coach over there, former Mangum coach, so he's done a great job with that program.
So guys, just put it plain and simple, how excited are you about these style playoffs?
I think we were talking after for that press conference, that's the first bracket that drew my attention, and obviously, I call some Episcopal games and Episcopal's in that bracket, so I'm definitely paying attention to it already. But when we talk about the matchups, man, I just can't wait. Especially when we get to the quarterfinals, you have probably 4 state championship matchups in the quarterfinals, so it's going to be really fun to watch. I'm just looking at the top side of the bracket. St. Charles Catholic, what can you say about them? Back-to-back state champions. Coach Wayne Stein, he's just filled in. It's not easy filling the shoes of a legend, Frank Monica, but he's just filled in just as good as you possibly can. And they don't have a lot of flash. They don't have a lot of big names, but you're going to have to beat them. Like they're just not going to beat themselves. You're just going to have to go out there and just beat them. And that's why they're just so tough year in and year out. And then, that could set up at the top side of the bracket, U-High and St. Charles Catholic, potentially in the semifinals. As far as the team in the top side, if you're looking at maybe like a real Cinderella, maybe as a 20-something seed that can make a run, watch out for Lake Charles Prep. Just because the athletes they really do have, they can make a run if you're really digging deep into it. But I think, Notre Dame, obviously you can't. You have to look at Louis Cook and what he's done. You can't count Louis Cook out. But I still think the stage sets up for a St. Charles Catholic U-High semifinal matchup on the top side. At the bottom, Calvary Baptist, you talk about really their offense. They can score, trust me. Abram Wardell at quarterback, the Simon brothers too, and what they're able to do. They got some weapons, and they're going to be really probably the most fun team to watch. We're talking about the brackets and the playoffs. Elijah Haven, that's going to be a fun quarterfinal. It's looking like. definitely pick the over when you were talking about the over-under for sure when you go Dunham and Calvary. Newman, I just think that Newman as well, they did have a tough loss to St. Charles Catholic, but I saw him, the only time I saw him this year was in the Jamboree, and I was really impressed. I thought it was the most physical team that Nelson Stewart has had. If you're talking about players, watch out for Bunky's Dylan Compton. He's a quarterback that's really athletic. Doesn't get a lot of love because he's not playing for a huge brand name. But as far as a name to watch out for, Dylan Compton's a really talented player at quarterback for Bunky. And Episcopal, I call a lot of their games. And Braden George is definitely a slept-on player that not a lot of people are talking about at the running back position. But I'm really liking Calvary Baptist and U-High in the state championship game. And Calvary Baptist, they beat some 5A teams really bad, like Bird and Captain Shreve. I know you're up there for Captain Shreve game. But I'm not sure they've seen a defense like U-High yet. So I think U-High is the most complete team. When you're talking about Picarella, they got record breakers everywhere. We talk about all the big recruits, but Seth Gale, he's like all-time record in touchdown catches. Granville Anderson set some big records. Harry Beecham set the all-time tackle record over there. So I think they're just solid across the board, and I think they're the most complete team. So I'm going to go with the U-High Cubs to win it all.
Yeah, for me, I'd be kind of surprised if our state champion in this bracket doesn't end up being either St. Charles, U-High, or Calvary. That trio. Yeah. I'd be kind of shocked if it's someone lower seeded than Dunham at 7. That's kind of my floor of the rankings and who I think could surprise me and make a run. You hit on a lot of these great teams though, all over the place. Bunky is kind of, after decades, they have a group that is trying to put that program, I don't even know if I'd say back on the map so much as on the map.
Right.
Dylan Compton and Kyle Johnson, that 25 class. Tanner Lemoyne is a senior. And so that group's interesting. That second round matchup potentially with Episcopal would probably be my favorite second round matchup in this entire bracket.
Yeah.
And then at the quarters, Jace, as you said, you have some state championship level matchups in a lot of places, particularly on the bottom side. That Calvary-Dunham game, they met last year and Dunham knocked Calvary out of, I think it was the quarters, and it was an 85-point game, 50-35.
Yeah.
That, talking to Jay Simon on Sunday, they've been hoping that they'd see Dunham again, which if I'm Dunham, I don't know that I like to hear that swaggy Calvary Baptist team is itching to see me.
And see, the lights work this time too, right?
And so you have some really good matchups. I am also kind of leaning toward U-High versus Calvary as my final, and think I'm going Calvary.
Okay.
I would probably agree that this would end up being Calvary's toughest test, really regardless of whether it ends up being St. Charles or U-High. I would have had Westgate in that conversation, but that was also the game that Jabari Antoine got knocked out, and so suddenly Peyton Landry's thrown into the fire on the fly, and it's just tough to kind of handle that. But Calvary is a team that I've felt since last year was kind of destined to make a deep run and get back to the Dome this year. It's just a matter of U-High and St. Charles in that semifinal that I think probably all see unfolding. Can U-High, if St. Charles shuts down the run, how is Emile and the passing game working that day? Because if they're a little bit off, we've seen St. Charles make some great teams.
They fooled us before.
Suffer their worst game of a season, and so you can never count out the Comets, the top-seeded Comets, one of the the remaining undefeated teams in this state, one of just 8 entering the playoffs. So that, I think, semifinal week would be one of the matchups of the entire state at any level.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I give it to you, Grant, one early matchup I'm looking forward to is Dunham and Parkview as well, because that was a high-scoring affair, and Parkview was able to get on top of that one. So I'm very interested to see what Abram Johnston and Elijah Haven do in that rematch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I kind of agree with you guys. I think it will be U-High and Calvary Baptist. I've been really liking this Calvary Baptist team. I remember going over there during the summer when I interned with Lee Burkeen, and their workouts and how they operated, and just looking at the team. They're basically a 4A, 5A team.
Pretty much.
As a 2A team.
Pretty much.
I mean, they look fantastic, and they got some great offensive players. James Simon is one of the best running backs in the country for the class of 2025.
Yep.
The number 2 running back in the state, obviously below Harlan Berry. They have talent all across the board. Their offensive linemen, I think, average like 6'1", 6'2", and about 250. They're a huge, huge team. And I think the only team that could possibly beat them is U-High because they have similar type of talent. I'm going to go with Calvary over U-High. I would, the thing is St. Charles, of course, they're the 2-time defending state champ. They're bringing a lot of players back this year, including Jeremiah Willis, who's fantastic. Kyle Cannon is an all-state linebacker who's one of the bigger sleepers in this state. But I think that the difference is for U-High beating St. Charles will be Emil Picarella.
Yeah.
I think he's been a fantastic addition transferring in from Mississippi.
Right.
I think he's elevated this U-High team to a whole new level of football. But I just think he'll come up short against that Calvary Baptist team. A matchup we should all be looking for, of course, is Dunham Parkview. 52-46. Parkview ended up winning. It was also Elijah Haven's
coming out
party. His first ever start. He had over 350 yards, over like 100 yards rushing. I mean, he was fantastic. And then he also has 2 really good receivers, Drew Bourgeois and Giacomo.
Yep.
But I think the sleeper team that people need to watch out for, well, there's 2. Of course, you mentioned Lake Charles College Prep. Mm-hmm. They have a lot of talent over there. I think they may be Catholic New Iberia to go to the quarterfinals.
Have a little bit of a
I think they're my
Cinderella
quarterfinal pick, before losing to U-High. But you need to watch out for Episcopal. Jace covers them for VSN. They're a very fantastic. They have 2 really good running backs in Reed Chauvin and Braden George, who's one of the more underrated running backs in the state. And if they get going, they're going to be tough to stop. And I think they'll beat Bunkie in the second round before going to the quarterfinals. And I think they will lose to Newman. I think Newman's just a better team. And one of the things about Episcopal is that they're kind of short at the quarterback right now. They have Zach Hugh, who has shown some promise, but he's only a sophomore, so he has some inexperience. But I think as he grows, I think he'll become a pretty good quarterback. But moving on to Division II non-select, we have probably they're not. It's not like the previous 4 brackets we've mentioned. It's kind of top heavy, but I think a lot of people think that this is North Dakota's bracket to lose. Mm-hmm. As we just mentioned, North Dakota is the number 1 team in Division II non-select. They have a fantastic, legendary head coach in Dennis Dunn. I think he's won over 9, 10 state championships, something crazy like that.
He's coached some pretty good quarterbacks too.
Yeah. Legendary head coach at Evangel Christian. Number 2, you have Cecilia, who's been kind of one of the least talked about 9-1 teams in this state.
Oh, yeah.
It's led by Diesel Solari, who's one of the best sleepers in this state.
Human highlight reel is Diesel Solari.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And then number 3, you have Assumption, who's been one of the better stories in this state.
Yeah.
I will get to Assumption a little later. I'll talk about him a lot. But moving on to number 4, we have Lutcher, who's the defending Division II non-select state champions, where they defeated North Dakota last year. And what was a very, one of the classics probably in Louisiana high school football history. Number 5, you have Westfeld, who is coming off their semifinals appearance last season, and they returned a lot of players, including LSU commit Joel Rogers at quarterback. Well, he's going to be playing safety at LSU, but he's a quarterback for the team. Number 6, you have Waspin, who has one of the better defenses in the state. Number 7, you have Leesville, who's shown a lot of promise and has some talent on that team. And number 8, you have Iowa, who is a very fantastic team in their own right. So what do you guys see out of this bracket? Who do you think is the sleeper in this bracket? Who should you watch out for? And is this North Dakota's bracket to lose?
North Dakota, in the run they made last year was incredible. What they did with a freshman quarterback, Luke Delafield. And that's another name we talk about, just quarterbacks coming up. He's another good one. Louisiana's pretty good at the quarterback position in the near future, I'm going to say that. But I think it is, but it's not going to be as easy as everybody thinks it's going to be. When we look at the top half of the bracket, I do have North Dakota coming out of it. But a team to watch out for is Opelousas. That is a team that's really gotten my eye. Deshaun Ford at the running back position. And we talk about the quarterback position pretty loaded the next couple of years. The running back position is obviously loaded next year, and that's another 2025 running back that a lot of people got their eyes on. Deshaun Ford, really Corey Fondo, really the whole Zach Malvo at quarterback. They got a lot of skilled talent, and really they were here at our media day before the season, and really their focus is like we want to make a home run. Like they are motivated this year to do that. I really like Opelousas. Now Lutcher, I've been really impressed with Dwayne Jenkins. I think this is one of Dwayne Jenkins' best coaching jobs he's done this year. They've won a lot with DeWanne Winfield at quarterback. Last year, I think they really focused more on winning more with their defense and playing complementary football. But I really have out in the top side of the bracket, I think Opelousas actually makes a semifinal run where they play North DeSoto. But I just don't think they can keep up with North DeSoto's offense. Mm-hmm. So I had North DeSoto going to the state championship game at the top side of the bracket. At the bottom side of the bracket, when you look at, I really like Cecilia. Like Jared said, I really like this football team. Diesel Solari, he's been dealing with some injury problems early in his career, but this year when he's healthy and he's rolling, he is fun to watch. And Coach Dennis Gaines does an excellent job with this football program. I really like Cecilia to go to the state championship game as well. To set up another 1 and 2, I mean, it's been kind of consistent with me so far, but there are some teams capable. Jennings at 10 seed, Coach Fusilier, who's been a long time Kinder head football coach, is over there, and he's been known to make big runs in the past. So keep an eye on number 10 Jennings. Wassman, what a year they've had with their head coach, Coach Cahy as well.
Terrence Cahy.
Yep, Terrence Cahy. So they've just been really good on defense. As far as really good defenses to watch out for, that's their only one. I know you really like Reese Turner and Assumption and the season they've had. They beat Lutcher too. So that really shows you a lot about that Mustangs program. But I'm going to set as for the semifinals at the end. I like Cecilia. And then we look at Cecilia coming out of the bottom side of the bracket. There's also a really good football team as well in Leesville too, and they got another really good running back. So, and I think he's related to Michael Ford, right?
Yeah, his nephew, cousin.
Yeah, yep. So
Xavier, that little quartet right there of Leesville with Xavier Ford, St. Martin with Blanco, and Jennings with Rajan Zeno.
Yeah, he's another good one.
Some future college running backs that we're going to see a lot of yards eaten up in those first couple rounds.
Yeah, there's something to war at Jennings with running backs. We were John Zeno now, and you're going to talk about the Etienne brothers. But just give me to wrap it up pretty quickly. Give me North DeSoto and Cecilia, and give me North DeSoto, the Griffins. Bouncing back from last year, I think another year in the Superdome in that setting gets an advantage over Cecilia. So give me the Griffins.
That's my thought process too. Is I like North DeSoto to win the state championship. I like Cecilia to come out of the bottom, but Division II non-select to me in the new format has kind of become the old 3A where it tends to be wide open and somebody shocks somebody and you don't get the higher seeds getting through. And so I don't know where the upsets or crazy runs are going to come from, but I feel like we're going to get something from somewhere. You mentioned a lot of the teams. Opelousas is a 12 seed that has a ton of talent, was a 3 seed last year and lost in, I believe, the quarters and was really motivated by that. Had that great sophomore class of a year ago, come back that much hungrier and more experienced. Number 13, Abbeville, winning its first district title in, I think, 27 years.
Yeah, that's another good shout-out.
That's a good group. Franklin Parish had 11 with Adrian Burnett, the former Tulane standout, who has a really talented team, including Tulane committed star all over the place, Javion White, and he's just kind of the similar to Diesel with Cecilia. He's the face of a really talented team that has other guys that have some college potential. Wassman with that great defense and some playmakers on the other side of the ball. And I mean that quartet with the three running.
That's a running back bracket.
Yeah. So I'm fully prepared to see somebody in potentially a double-digit seed range make a quarters, if not semifinals run. If I was forced to bet right now, though, the Griffins hold serve and win it as the 1 seed.
Yeah, you mentioned a 20-something seed that can do it, Jared. I mean, St. Martinville.
Talented team.
Yeah.
Not the year that they're used to having of late, but they have some potential there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with both of y'all. I think this is North Dakota's year. I don't think I can't see them losing a game. In this bracket. I think it's just hard for me to see that just because with all the talent that they have, Luke Delafield, of course, they have a very talented receiver in Cole Corey. Their defense is fantastic as well, and they also have a great coaching staff. And Dennis Sun has done this multiple times before, so he's no stranger to playoff time. Another team, I agree with you, Jace. Obelisk is another team that you should watch out for. I think they're going to make a serious push towards the semifinals. I really do. They are the only 3 losses they've had were to a very talented Turlings team.
Yeah.
Then you had St. Amand where they lost by only 6 points. 9-1 St. Amand team, which we'll get to later in the podcast, in the show, or whatever you want to call it. And then also they had a 3-point loss to Cecilia. So they're a very talented team. Corey Amos is one of the top prospects in the country for the class of 2025. So they have talent all over the field. I think they're gonna beat. I think they're gonna beat Rain, even though Rain's a very talented team in their own right. Who I think is another sleeper team as well.
Yeah.
Kylan Wheeler's fantastic.
He's fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
He's fun to watch.
Oh yeah, and then I think they can beat West Feliciana, and guess what? In the quarterfinals, they probably will face Lutcher. I think they're going to beat Lutcher as well.
I think so too.
So that's a team that you should definitely watch out for. But I think I disagree with your semifinal pick. I think Assumption is going to make to the Dome.
Okay.
I'm really high on them. Coach Will Broussard has done a fantastic job with their program. Last year they're 4-5. Now this year we're talking about them making to the Dome.
Yeah.
They beat a Lutcher team that has had a stranglehold on their district for a very long time. So that's what I knew they're going to be a pretty good team, but I think everyone finally realized, Assumption's a team you need to watch it for.
Yeah, that was the big one. Yeah.
They have 2 1,000-yard rushers. Both of them rush over 1,200 yards. And Reese Turner, who's their quarterback, but he does everything for them. He's really a receiver. Yeah. He's going to play receiver in our bowl game. But he's had 1,400 rushing yards. Their running back, Chase Jacobs, who is the nephew of Brandon Jacobs, 2-time Super Bowl champ with the Giants and was a key contributor to their success. But he's a really good back as well, 1,200 yards as well. I mean, he's one of the better sleepers in the state. I think somebody needs to pick him up because I watched his highlight film. He is fast, man. He's physical, 5'9", 210, 215.
Yeah.
And he's a fantastic back. But then also on the defensive side, you need to watch out for Alfred Kennedy. He is their edge rusher, 78 tackles, 10 sacks, 26 tackles for loss, 3 forced fumbles, and 1 fumble recovery. I mean, this Assumption team, I think, is destined to make a dome run. And the reason why I like this Assumption team is that they got nothing to lose. Yeah. I mean, I like those scrappy teams up in the river parishes.
And they can run the football too, which is important this time of the year.
Oh yeah, exactly. And they're not afraid of anybody. I mean, they want to do it for the community. I've talked with Reese. I mean, they're really loving the coverage that we've been kind of giving them because they deserve it. I think they're a team you need to watch out for. This is a team you can't sleep on. I think that they're going to show everyone what Assumption football is all about, and I'm really excited to see them in the playoffs. So give me Assumption and North Dakota in the state championship game, but unfortunately for the Mustangs, I think they just come up short against a much better North Dakota team. But
heck of a run.
but again, they could beat North Dakota. I'm not even joking. Like that is a team. That is a sleeper team for sure. Because I think people kind of look down on Assumption because they're, if you told like they're in Napoleonville, Louisiana. If you ask anybody in Louisiana to point that on the map, they couldn't point it out. I think they have that edge to them, and I think they want to show everybody
us against the world.
Exactly. They have that mentality. Jared went down there and talked with all of them. I mean, that's a serious football team, y'all. I don't think you should sleep on them. But moving on to Division II Select. I think we all know about the Lafayette teams. We all know about St. Thomas and War, who's the number 1 seed. We all know about Lafayette Christian, who's the number 3 seed. But again, I think yes, they may be the shoe-in favorites to make the Dome. But I think this division is a lot better than it was last year. The 2 seed you have Edie White. I think it's a fantastic team. I can see them in the dome. At number 4 you have JFK, who's been one of the I think one of my favorite stories out this year. A few years ago, when Linares Alpes took over that program, they only had like 23 players.
Yeah.
Maybe even less than that. I remember he told me they had at least like 20 players. And they ended up going to the playoffs. And since then, the enrollment's gone up. Their roster's now up to 60 kids, and it's growing. He's a fantastic coach. He was a fantastic player at Tulane. Speaking of Tulane standouts, I mean, he had 8 interceptions his last year at Tulane. He's in the Tulane Hall of Fame. He's a fantastic player. I've known him for quite some time because he played for my dad at Tulane. Yeah. So he's seen me in a stroller. Like that's how long he's known me. But they have a fantastic cornerback in Bernard Causey, better known as BB. Yeah. I actually got to speak with him not that long ago. He's my first diamond in the rough article, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic kid. All those kids are great. I also have one of the better quarterbacks in the New Orleans area. Darnsborg, who's thrown for over 1,700 yards now.
Yeah.
Since, I think it's been updated a little bit. But that's a very talented team. That's a team you need to watch out for. Number 5, you have Archbishop Shaw, who's made a comeback. They're kind of they were one of the bottom feeders in New Orleans there for a little while, and then they brought it back, Hank Tierney, and he's really elevated the stats of the program. They've been one of the harder teams in the state as of late. They defeated a talented Carencro team. I actually said that they were going to beat Carencro.
You called it, yeah.
I called it because I think they're just one of the harder teams right now. That's another team you need to watch out for. Number 6, you have St. Louis Catholic out of the Lake Charles area. Number 7, you have Terrence Catholic, another team you should probably not sleep on, with Preston Welch and a fantastic offensive mind and Dane Charpentier. And then number 8, you have St. Michael, the Archangel, which has been probably the best story coming out of the Baton Rouge area. They're looking to seek their first playoff win ever in their program's history. So what do you guys see out of this bracket? Who may be the sleeper team in this bracket? And are we going to see another rematch of another classic matchup between LCA and STM?
I sure hope so. I mean, get my popcorn ready and sit down and watch that in the dome. I think the stars are just aligning for that to happen. But as you can tell, like last year, Edie White was really good, and that they've actually ended St. Thomas More's season 2 years ago. I believe that was Walker Howard's last game, and best in all those in that crew. But looking at this year, though, you mentioned Turling's Catholic. They were in the semis last year. John F. Kennedy, the year they've done. They've had Evangel Christian can certainly put up some points. Archbishop Shaw, the season they have with Coach Tierney. There's some really good teams out there. But I just think the stars are just aligning for that matchup to happen again. If you look at the top side of the bracket, team to watch out for, obviously, Evangel is definitely a team because they can score. I mean, as far as receivers go, Parker Fulgham is as really good as there is, and Josh Booty's son, him and Peyton and Parker, the quarterback and receiver combo. Of course, they're going to have that chemistry together with being brothers. But St. Michael having a great season, like you said, a storybook run. I really do think they end up getting that first playoff win in this bracket, and I think it'll be really huge for Coach LeJeune and that team to really do it. And I think this is set up for him to do it. You mentioned John F. Kennedy. As far as goes towards the semifinals, I think St. Thomas More would face. I like Archbishop Shaw. I think Archbishop Shaw will meet them in the semifinals, and winning a shootout like that against Carencro, I think that was one of the biggest momentum wins for them heading into the playoffs out of any team. So
as a program in general.
Yeah, as a program in general.
Season, I think just in the future of that program.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think with that win, it's going to really set them on pace to go for a deep playoff run. Vanderbilt Catholic, another running back, Jalen Coleman, Coach Minton, who actually, he's been knowing me since I was born too, with him and my dad's relationship. But he's been telling me about this kid for a long time. So that's definitely a player to keep an eye out for when it comes to Vanderbilt Catholic. But I think St. Thomas More gets out of the top side of the bracket, and when you look at the bottom side of the bracket, of course, Jawan Johnson and LCA and what they've been doing, putting the video game numbers. this year. I think they're just motivated after what happened last year in the Superdome. They feel like they had the state championship up by 10 with about a minute and 30 seconds left. I know they're motivated to go back there. Edie White's had himself a great season this year, undefeated district championship. Jake Sternfels is a quarterback. He's just a winner over there. They can run the football. Paxton LaFont is a receiver that nobody's really talking about just because Edie White does tend to run the football a lot, but they've actually thrown the ball a little bit more because they had a dude like that they can throw the football to in Paxton LaFont. But I think Edie White's going to give LCA a tough challenge, especially on the defensive side of the football. But I think LCA gets out of the bottom side of the bracket. Now, an interesting playoff matchup that I'm looking forward to is Turlings and Madison Prep. That could be a really good second-round playoff game right there. I'm intrigued to see how those two styles play against each other. That's definitely an early playoff game to keep an eye out for. But I just think the stars just align in this bracket. LCA, St. Thomas More, and the way that both these, how close the regular season finale was an awesome game too. LCA had their chances to win that one too.
Yeah.
I just think the type of player Jawan is, and just the career he's had, and just I just saw the hunger in their eyes earlier this year against Turlings. I mean, they really want it. I just think sooner or later, I think they rematch in the Dome. And I think it's going to be a storybook ending for LCA to get that state championship. So that's how I see it. I sure hope St. Thomas More and LCA play against each other in the Dome, but there is a scenario where it may not happen with a team like Edie White probably going to ruin that as far as like ruin that potential matchup.
Yeah, I think Edie White's the biggest threat to that. LCA would have to go down to Thibodaux and play a really good Edie White team, one of the undefeated remaining teams, and as you mentioned, more balanced than they necessarily get credit for. Not unlike that Curtis team we saw on Friday night where everyone says they just run, but they show they can throw, and that changes things quite a bit when that's hitting. They trust Jake Sternfels to do that for Edie White. A couple first-round games I'm watching. That 16-17 Northside with Jacardi Carter helping kind of resurge that Northside program, and Estruma, same story with Sid Edwards and Baton Rouge. And so just seeing both of those programs on the way back up has been really exciting. And then the Evangel Christian versus Bel Air 12 versus 21 to set up what I think could be one of the best second-round matchups if we get an Evangel coming down to New Orleans to play Archbishop Shaw. That's maybe my favorite second-round matchup if we get it. But I think STM and LCA are the teams to beat. I think on their respective sides, Shaw and Edie White are the biggest threats to that. As much fun as a Shaw versus Kennedy quarterfinal could be in New Orleans. And I really don't know from there, honestly. LCA has come up just short against STM these last couple of years, and you kind of wait for that flip, because when you're two teams as talented as they are, as evenly matched in a lot of ways, as familiar with each other, at some point the other team is going to win a game, and that's part of why the STM win last week felt like such a statement win for Sam Altman and company.
Yeah,
the Cougars was okay. Everyone keeps talking about LCA and they're going to get us, and he told Brett McCormick after, he's like, it kind of pissed us off. And so that's kind of where that STM program is now. And we'll see if we get it. I think we probably do. And how it shakes out. I imagine it'll be another track meet thriller down the stretch.
Get your popcorn ready. That's all I'm going to say when you watch that game. How about Sam Altman, Grant? I mean, as far as him, I'm surprised he hasn't got as much offers as he has.
All for that kid.
I know. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is a guy. I'm not saying he's going to play at the FBS level, but I'm surprised like Nichols or St. McNeese or Southeastern hasn't offered this kid. I mean, he has been the most consistent quarterback we've had in this state. Every time there's a big game, he's going to make a big play. We saw that last year when they were down 2 touchdowns. He went bang, bang, bang down the field, including the game-winning touchdown.
Like 30 seconds.
And he throws dots, too. I mean, he's thrown some absolute dots. I mean, he's been incredible.
The game winner he threw was an absolute. I don't know how he threw that pass.
They've won 20 straight now with him at the helm, and he has stepped up on the biggest stages and the biggest.
I don't think he's ever lost a game as a starter.
I don't remember if he was the starter last year against Catholic when they lost.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Because I think early on it was 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
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 Him and Will Taylor.
Yeah, Will Taylor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, then also I think I think a team that you shouldn't cut out is Shaw. I think they're playing their best football as of late. I mean,
Yeah, you mentioned that 57-50 game against Karen Crow, and the thing that stood out to me with that most is Shaw and Cecilia actually were two of the teams that coming out of the spring I looked at and said, these are teams that have legitimate state championship potential that aren't who we've talked about in recent years.
Mm-hmm.
And for Shaw, it was all about the defense was insane. The defense was going to be so good. And the defense wasn't great against Karen Crow, but the offense showed that they can step up when they need to and win a game. And so they may be a little bit more balanced at this point in the season than I necessarily gave them credit for early on.
And the first two losses were against a St. Charles team that hasn't lost in 2 years, 10-17, and they lost against the Kincaid School, which is LSU running backs Josh Williams' alma mater down in Houston. But they've won every game since then. I mean, they've averaged about 40 points a game.
Beat Rummel big.
Beat Rummel. Even though they've been up and down, that's still a decent Rummel
big
team.
Win.
43-28. I think it's the first time in 70. It's been a little while.
Long time.
10 years. Yeah. And then they scored at least 34 points every single game since then. And the last 3 games they scored at least 55 points.
Yeah.
I mean, their offense is big, insane. And the only time they've allowed more than 28 points was against Karen Crow. And Karen Crow has one of the best offenses.
And to win a shootout against them was very impressive.
And that's a talented so there's no obviously you don't want to allow 50 points, but that's a talented Karen Crow team who can score it well. Yeah. So the fact that you're able to show that you're able to hang on with them and score some points as well shows me that they are a very serious state title contender. And I think St. Thomas More will beat them in the semifinals, but I would not be shocked. I would not be shocked if Shaw beat St. Thomas More. I think they have the right team to defeat a team like St. Thomas More.
When you're balanced like that, you can do it.
Yeah, they also have a fantastic coach in Hank Tierney, who's a Hall of Famer.
Absolutely.
So in that semifinal match, you're going to have 2 Hall of Fame coaches going at it. 2 old school guys who've been doing this for a very long time. Jim Hightower has been there for about 40 years now.
I think guys that have seen a lot of people in Stroll.
Yeah. Like coaching now 2 or maybe 3 generations now.
Exactly.
This is crazy.
Exactly. I think that's going to be a fantastic semifinal matchup I'm looking forward to. I think it's going to be LCA and St. Thomas More in the Dome. I have St. Thomas More winning the state championship, but I can't sleep on Shaw. I think that's a matchup. If Shaw makes it that far, that is a matchup you need to really look out for. And also involving Shaw, I'm really looking for if Evangel wins the first round game. I'm really looking forward to that game because I think if that game is being played, I think I'm going to go back home to New Orleans to go cover that because there's not many times where you get to see an Evangel team come to New Orleans, no matter how good or bad they are.
Yeah, there's some throwback history between those 2 programs.
Oh yeah,
sure.
And it's good to see really both those coaches from the beginning during those great runs as a head coaches now. You're talking about Denny Duran and Hank Tierney.
Right. Shaw's entire path could be bangers if you get Evangel, JFK, STM, and
that's a heck of a road to get there. That's a tough road.
But Hank Tierney's not. He's used to that. He's done that at Shaw, and they most recently did that at Ponchatoula when they went on that run to the state title game, when they faced some great opponents as well. But
now we go to the big boys, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, all these playoffs have been big boys. I mean, even the last 3 or 4 we mentioned have been insane. But moving on to Division I Non-Select, probably in my opinion, maybe the most stacked playoff bracket that we have. Obviously, the number 1 seed is Ruston, who I think is, along with the Cavalry, is the pound for pound top team in the state. Their defense is probably the greatest defense we've seen since, well, not greatest, but the best defense we've seen since the 2019 Rummel team, where they just were fantastic on defense, and you didn't even need the offense to score points because the defense had it all wrapped up. And then you have the 2 seed. You have Neville, one of the winningest programs in the state's history, and have I believe like 8 or 9 state championships. Number 3, you have Desherhan, who's the defending Division I Non-Select state champion. Number 3, I think they should be number 2. In my opinion, they won 24 or 25 straight games. I can't see them being below a team like Neville, who's lost 1 game. At number 4, you have Airline, who's been one of the top stories out of North Louisiana, out of Shreveport. They have the best offense in the state, the number one passing offense in the state as well, led by Ben Taylor, who's thrown for over 3,000 yards.
Yeah.
The number 5 spot, you have Saint Amand, who has one of the better defenses in the state. David Oliver's has a really good team over there. They may not be the biggest, but they're gritty and they're tough, and they're going to smack you right in the mouth. At the number 6 spot, you have Zachary, who will always be a state title contender as long as David Brewerton's over there. And even after David Brewerton, they have talent for days. And that's going to be that's to me one of the top jobs in this state. Number 7 for the number 7 seed, you have Dutchtown, who's led by Guy Mistretta, who's no stranger to winning big time football games. State champion head coach from his days at Redemptorist. And at number 8, you have West Monroe, which I think can make a run to a state title. I mean, that's a very scary team they face right out the gate. I mean, not many people are used to seeing West Monroe at the number 8 spot, and they've really responded well since the controversy with Todd Garvin, and even after the Zachary loss they had, which was brutal. They've really turned it around. They almost beat Ruston last week as well. They did. So what do you guys like out of this bracket? Who should we watch out for this bracket in terms of sleepers, players we may need to watch out for that we probably may not know, but then also who you ultimately think will win?
They got a lot of big names. I mean, it's easier said than done when we're talking about answering this question. But if you look at the top side of the bracket, obviously Ruston is the favorite. A lot of people are saying they're the best team, regardless of class, out there, 5A and on down. And they fell just short of a state championship last year in what felt like a 2011 LSU Bama game as far as defenses were concerned in that state championship game. But when you look at the top side of the bracket on the road for Ruston, now Terrebonne's an interesting team just because they got a lot of really good talent. They're led by obviously the receiver Colin Billiot that's committed to LSU, but they got a lot of really talent. Tylen Bingham, the defensive line, and they got some really good running backs, a lot of really good skill position players, so they're a dangerous team. West Monroe, I feel like they're hitting their stride right now, and I know they're motivated to meet up with Ruston again and probably set up a really interesting matchup in the quarterfinals. David Oliver, we're talking about coaching jobs this year. He's done an excellent job, and he's really up there. And if you're talking about a Coach of the Year type candidate, David Oliver's done an excellent job this year for the San Juan Gators. They're a gritty team. A team that's like a 20-something seed that could be interesting is Mandeville. And we talk about Nate Shepard and their talented skill player for the Skippers. And it sets up because if they beat Sam Houston, I mean, that Sam All game, I mean, they're capable on a good day to beat Sam All, maybe go to the quarterfinals. Southside, we saw them. Well, actually, all three of us saw Southside this year against Karen Crow. And I thought they match up well against Karen Crow, and they're making a lot of strides.
Also saw them against Notre Dame as well.
Yeah, so they're a really good team. That's a balanced team. They can run the football, play really good defense. You can win a lot of games doing it that way. And then Airline. So that Southside Airline match is going to be very interesting. But you talk about Ben Taylor, you talk about their high profile, high just offense.
Two different styles.
Two different styles. Yeah, I mean you talk about different styles there. Yeah, Southside Airline. We want to see what style fits. Which one is going to go move on because Airline can definitely move the football. You talk about Trevon Jackson as well. At the running back position. He's kind of like an Alvin Kamara for him as well. And then you look at the bottom side of the bracket. I mean, Destrehan, they're the defending state champions in this bracket. They got a lot of talent. Their quarterback is another really good quarterback. Jackson Fields. Yep, 2026. Only a sophomore. You got a lot of weapons to throw the football to. Their defense is obviously still really good, led by Kalaj Cobbins at the linebacker position. And you talk about Anthony Robinson as well from the Ole Miss commit. So they're really good. Probably you can say maybe the most balanced team when we talk about overall in Division I non-select. I'm interested to see how Zachary does and respond to the last that was a tough loss against Catholic in that fashion in overtime. But I'm very intrigued to see what they do there because that Salmon team has got a lot of speed, got a lot of really good athletes. That's going to be a really good challenge for them early in the playoffs. In that second round, obviously, if both teams win their first round matchups. Dutchtown's had a great season. Ponchatoula is another 20-something seed that can maybe make a run, get a playoff win or two. First-round matchups. If you talk about best first-round matchups, it's a game that you're going to be seeing this week. East St. John and Central. And obviously you got Neville with the number 2 seed. So looking at the bottom side of the bracket, I still have Destrehan coming out of that side too. But that quarterfinal matchup between Destrehan and Zachary seems like that's going to be coming up. That's going to be like a state championship matchup in the quarterfinals. And I have Destrehan getting by Neville in order to go to the state championship. So maybe another rematch is what it's looking like with Ruston and Destrehan in the state championship.
Yeah, I think there's a really good chance of that. Certainly, that's 2 teams that coming into this season in the LSWA polls, I kept voting those two. Those two and Carr and Curtis were kind of my 4 that led the way. I think that Destrehan and Zachary quarterfinal does, to me as well, kind of determine who makes the dome out of the bottom half of the bracket, and that Ruston probably makes it through the top. And each of those teams, to me, it's just how does their first-year starter quarterback handle the moments that they're called upon to provide that balance, whether it be Josh Brantley at Ruston, the 25, Jackson Fields, you guys mentioned, the 26 at Destrehan, Hudson Spangler, an older guy compared to those guys, but taking the reins for the first time this year, and he obviously went up to West Monroe and had himself a hell of a game. So they've all shown at different points this season that they can get it done, but those are kind of the 3 leaders of this bracket to me, but a bracket that is an awful lot of fun with a lot of talent and good matchups everywhere, including, to me, most of the top first-round matchups that we'll see this week.
Yeah.
You guys talk about East St. John versus Central, where Grant's going to be on Friday night. I think Central's got a real strong chance of upending what I think is a good East St. John team. I just think that's going to be a great football game. Chalmette, a 9-1 Isles team, a district champion, hosting Ponchatoula is a game I like a lot. Ouachita Parish has had some ups and downs through this year. Coming down to Sanamon team with Coach Oliver, Caleb Ricks, and some of the guys down there at the pit, I think is a fun one. And then that Westgate Terrebonne 16 versus 17. One of those 4 is where I'll be Friday night.
Okay.
I'm still figuring it out, waiting to see. I usually like to wait and see where TV is going to be and kind of show some love elsewhere and whatnot.
Right.
But those are the 4 that stood out to me as probably my top 4 first-round matchups. And that a little interesting note, that Westgate Terrebonne 16-17 to then go on to face Ruston. I believe there's 6 LSU commits in this bracket, and 3 of them
are just on that game.
Yeah. And so how that plays out is interesting. And there may end up being more LSU commits on those teams over the next couple of years as well as in the rest of the bracket. But I think you hit on a lot of the other stuff that I saw. I like that North Shore team at 25 to go up and compete with West Monroe.
They've done it before.
Yeah. But West Monroe, we all kind of put on our back burner after the Zachary game, and they've shown that kind of with the old Mark Twain quote or whatever, like it's been kind of exaggerated, their demise. And so do you potentially get a West Monroe-Ruston rematch in the quarters? Is one of those rematches to watch depending on how the bracket shakes out. And at the end of the day, I do think we get Ruston versus either Zachary or Destrehan, but it's going to be a lot of fun to get there.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun bracket, that's for sure.
Yeah, a lot of great teams this one, and really I think the biggest weekend will be the second round weekend. I mean, you're going to have a lot of great matchups. If it lines up right, you can have Walker and West Monroe going at it. Sam Houston, that could be a great matchup if that lines up. Even Cinnamon and Mandeville. And Washington, but don't sleep on Washington. They may be last, but don't sleep on them either. I mean,
Play a tough schedule.
They played a tough schedule, so that's why they're so low in terms of the seeding. I mean, you have Southside Thibodaux. Even the first one, Southside Thibodaux could be a great matchup. And Southside, let's say Southside wins that matchup. They could square up well with Airline. So a lot of great matchups, man. But also don't sleep on Parkway. Parkway is the number 19 seed over there, where they face up Bell Chase. I think I'm going to have them win in the first round, where they'll play Dutcherhand. I think that's going to be a great matchup. Don't sleep on the Parkway Panthers now. Salmon, West Washington in the first round. I mean, that's going to be a great matchup as well, being played in Slidell. And I think they're going to probably play Zachary, and that's going to be a great matchup as well. Dustin and Chalman the second round could be a great matchup, but don't sleep on Ponchatoula as well. They could easily play Dustin in the second round as well. That'd be another great matchup. And even East St. John and Central in the first round, that'll be
That's gonna be fun.
I'm going to be going to that one. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be very close. A lot of talent on both sides of the ball for both teams. And I think one of those teams could beat Neville. I don't see that happening, but I could see them beating Neville. I think, but then also I think a key matchup to look out for will be, if it comes to this, will be Airline and Russ in the semifinals. You literally have an unstoppable force against the what's it called
immovable object.
Yeah, the number one offense in the state, and you probably have arguably the number one defense in the state going at it. That's gonna be a fun matchup, and I think a lot of times I think the stigma is that a lot of those big the Street 4 schools, the bigger Street 4 schools, don't really get it done, and I think you're gonna see that a lot in these playoffs. I think they have the ability to get it done. Don't sleep on Airline. I think Airline can put up some points on Rustin, no matter how good Russ's defense is, but I think in that game, it will be key for Russ's offense to really step up, especially going against an offense like Airlines, led by Ben Taylor and running back Trey Jackson, who's one of the bigger sleepers in the state.
Yeah.
He's like an Alvin Kamara type of running back, and also Jarvis Davis.
He's the leading receiver in the state, I believe.
Bryson Broom. They got some great receivers over there.
I was about to say, like, Jarvis is a guy that probably needs to be mentioned. Brian Watley, a defensive end, and Neville and Juju Burns, a safety at Neville. And Neville's loaded with talent.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm going to leave someone out regardless. Albert Lewis at Ponchatoula, the Arizona State commit, Jamal Sapp, who is another one colleges should be offering. Jamal Sapp for Ponchatoula, Bishop Davis there.
Yeah.
Salmon with Jacoby Jefferson racking up.
He is fun to watch.
Huge numbers every week. Antonio Gladney, the youngster at Parkway, is a playmaker that folks are going to know sooner than later. I'm trying to think if there's anybody. Kyle Williams at North Shore, Walker, Jaden Bardalis is probably returning a punt for a touchdown right now.
East St. John receivers too. I mean, they got some skill.
Takai Joseph, just committed to Southeastern.
Kendall Walker,
Yeah,
a lot of talent and a lot of great quarterbacks. East St. John's has, I think they have two great quarterbacks as well. I'm not sure one of them went down to injury. I know they have two quarterbacks who are putting up numbers so far. But yeah, a lot of great talent. I think we're going to have Dustin and Rustin once again a rematch. I'm probably going to give it to Dustin once again. I think Dustin, they just they may have lost some players from last year, but they've rebuilt quite nicely. Jackson Fields is probably the best quarterback to come out of Dustin, probably since Jordan Jefferson, if you want to make that case. And he's only a sophomore. And they have 4 D1 wide receivers, and Johnny Teal, Jabari Mack, Greg Milfred, and Philip Wright, and they're all sophomores and juniors. Obviously, Jabari Mack and Greg Milfred are sophomores. Johnny Teal and Philip Wright are juniors.
Right.
And they also have a fantastic defense that's led by LSU commit Kalash Cobbins, Ole Miss commit and DB Anthony Robinson. They also have a pretty talented DB as well in Ty Terrell. So I think I'm gonna have picked Dustin. I think they got it rolling over there.
That offense versus Rustin's defense is going to be really fun
it's going to be pretty fun. And they also have one of the better defenses in the state as well. So that'll be another fun defensive matchup going at it in the Dome. Now we move on to our last bracket. Guys, I know it's been long, but we saved the best for last. Division I Select. I think the biggest story out of this is Holy Cross being the number 1 seed. I think that shocked me a little bit just because they had 2 losses. They didn't win the Catholic League.
Yeah.
But it opened the door for them. Some key losses opened the door for them to be the number 1 seed, and that's huge for their program considering the fact that they finished in last place in the Catholic League last year. And Jared's kind of like looks like he's a Jesuit grad. For some of you guys don't know. But yeah, what a fantastic job by Scott Wadney. I actually shouted him out on one of my Twitter posts. Just mentioned, hey man, I'm sorry about your loss. But 30-0. I know you're still.
There's no one happier in the country to see the potential of a Jesuit Holy Cross rematch than Andrew Lopez, my buddy from Holy Cross, who for years we would kind of be back and forth a little bit, and so if he gets to watch Holy Cross for a second time in 4 weeks or whatever it is, beat the brakes off the Blue Jays. We will certainly eat that up. But they've done a great job, man. I really like that team, like Scott Watney and the staff over there and what they've been able to accomplish. And at this point, I'm old as hell and been graduated for long enough that I just want to see good people do well. And that's no knock on Ryan Manali and company, but I don't feel that same level of we lost the game type thing about Jets. I just enjoy good football regardless of how it shakes out.
Right, exactly. And the thing is, before this year, the last 3 years, they won 7 games. Yeah. This year they won 8. So that's an incredible 1-year turnaround by Scott Watney, and I think he's the coach of the year in the state.
I absolutely agree. He's my candidate too.
Yeah, and and then you have number 2, you have Captain Shreve, who's another fantastic team out of Shreveport.
Shows how much more impressive that Calvary win was.
Yeah, exactly, right. And they also beat Airline. They handed Airline their only loss of the season. That's a big team you should watch it for, led by Trey Fuller, who's a fantastic player, and also Devin Harper is one of the best offensive linemen in the country.
Yeah.
They're both for the class of 2025.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have number 3, you have Catholic BR. They've been one of the harder teams in the state.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, technically, they've only got 2 losses, but they really have 3 if you're talking about on the field stuff. Mm-hmm. After they won the game in dramatic fashion over Picayune, who's one of the top teams in the state of Mississippi, and there's a lot of people that say Danny Bill's knee was down, so there might be some people that say they're 0-4, but it is what it is. But then the next game they got throttled by a Warren Easton team that had nothing to lose, 49-26. The next week you had arguably one of the games of the year with that dramatic ending against U-High, where U-High won on a game-winning 35-yard field goal. Yeah. And that was the second attempt because the first one it was missed. Yep. Everyone's running on the field. U-High thought they won, but the field goal was short. Catholic was running on the field because they thought they won. And then there's a penalty flag. U-High took it. Got an extra 10, 15 yards, and then Granville Anderson came up with the clutch kick to win the game for them. Mm-hmm. But Catholic then they lost against St. Thomas More the very next week in dramatic fashion as well. But they've won every game since that, including a 35-28 overtime victory over Zachary, which is also one of the games of the year as well. So they're one of the harder teams in the state. Number 4, you have Brother Martin. This is another stereotypical Brother Martin team, one of the best defenses in the state. For a great coaching staff that's led by Mark Bonice, who's been there for about 12 to 13 years. And has really rebuilt that Brother Martin program after it had been dormant for a good 10, 15 years ever since Bobby Conlon retired. Mm-hmm. So and last year they're also the Division I Select runner-ups. Right. Number 5, you have Edna Carr. Even though they've lost AJ Samuel, they returned a pretty good quarterback in John Johnson, who has come on as of late. But they're another team but they're kind of considered a sleeper. Yeah. Because of because of how stacked this bracket really is.
Kind of weird to hear that.
Yeah. A lot of talent. I have talent on both sides of the ball, including Teron Manchild, Francis.
Love that nickname.
LSU commit. And then also Aiden Hall is one of the top prospects for the class of 2026. Yep. Then the number 6 by John Curtis Christian. JT broke the record or didn't break the record, doesn't matter. The man's won 28 state championships.
Depending on who you ask.
And he's also he won his most recent last year. So they're the defending Division I Select champions, and I think they're the favorite to win it, despite them being the 6th seed. Number 7, you have St. Paul's. It's been kind of they've been, even though they really haven't been making much noise. Yeah. They've been a pretty consistent team this year. 9-1, won their district outright. Fantastic team. Their only loss was against the number 4 seed Brother Martin. And then at 8, you have Acadiana, who I think is a sleeper team. Yeah. For sure. I mean, which is crazy to even think about because the amount of talent they have on the team. Mm-hmm. And then also Matt McCullough is a 2-time state champion. Is it 2-time or 1?
He won back-to-back.
Going back-to-back, yeah. So, he's a 2-time state champion head coach, and they also have a fantastic staff over there as well. So, who do you like? Who do you guys like out of this bracket? Who do you think is going to win? What matches are you kind of looking forward to? And what players should we look out for?
Yeah, I mean, really, Holy Cross. I mean, I got to say, I agree with you. I mean, both of us talked about it, but Coach Wandy's my pick for Coach of the Year.
Mhm.
What he's able to do this year has been nothing short of remarkable, and they've had one of the most impressive wins this year when they're able to beat John Curtis, I believe, for the first time ever. So, I mean, that's very impressive for them to do that. My eyes got me directly attention to Acadiana and Karen Crow. It's always a classic when those two teams go up against each other, and I believe Acadiana won by a point in the regular season game, and they made it in the playoffs last year. So, of course, they got me each other again. I don't know what Coach McCullough has to do to stay away from those guys, but that's going to be a really fun game. I can easily that game can go either way, so that's going to be a really fun game to watch. And also the top side of the bracket and the car. Everybody's talking about the fashion that they lost because it's not often you see and the car just lose like that from like just get outclassed from the very beginning. So I think Bryce Brown's definitely going to get these guys right. They're going to be mad, and you don't want to play a mad and the car team with a lot to prove. So I really like and the car coming out of the top side of the bracket just because of that. And you look at also the top side of the bracket, Alexandria, Brother Martin could be a very good matchup in the second round. But, yeah, give me and the car in the top side of the bracket. I really like them. I think that Holy Cross can certainly play against them in the semifinals. But and the car, both these two teams played against each other. I just don't like that matchup for Holy Cross. So I really like and the car coming from the top side of the bracket. Kobe Young's definitely a guy that everybody's going to be keeping their eye on for Holy Cross, and the receiver that's committed to Georgia Tech. He's definitely a really good football player. I mean, Chance Babineau for Karen Crow, what he was able to do as a receiver last year and move the quarterback. Not a lot of people can just make that transition that he's been able to do this year. And he's shown that he can be a pretty good quarterback at the next level if he needed to. And you look at the bottom side of the bracket, a lot of big names. You talk about Catholic High, John Curtis. How about McKinley hosting the playoff game at the number 11 seed? But I really like St. Aug. I mean, they're a really talented team. You've covered them. You've been around them. But you can't count them out. Even though you say, oh, they're a 22nd seed, they've got the talent to really beat you on a really bad day. So keep an eye on the Purple Knights. And Tioga, too. Is definitely a team to keep an eye on as well. Ja'Corin Norris is a defensive back. I don't understand why he's got more offers than he has. He's just a really good football player. I really like that St. Paul-Tioga matchup. That's going to be a very interesting second-round game. Obviously, John Ehret. You covered John Ehret this year, too. They got some really good players. And then you look at the bottom side with Captain Shreve and what they're able to do, just bouncing back. I mean, from that loss against Calvary Baptist, really a lot of kudos goes to the Gators, what they're able to do this year. But the bottom side, I really think that winner of the Catholic John Curtis game is going to end up going to the state championship game. And I am a Catholic High alum, okay, but I'm going to get a lot of heat for this one because, and I know what you're going to say. I scared some people for Catholic to say, okay, I'm going for Zachary, but I turned out last second. I turned around and picked Catholic. But for this time, yep, you can go back and watch the tape, Grant. You want to agree with that. You can go back and watch the tape. But I am actually picking John Curtis to be Catholic, and I'm staying with John Curtis to pick Catholic. I just think with the whole record deal and JT Curtis, you definitely don't want to give that man any more motivation than he needs to. I can't go against JT Curtis. He's burned me so many times when I have. I think they're on a mission.
They're fired up.
They're fired up. I have John Curtis repeating. They're going to play in the car again. I don't think it's going to be nearly as lopsided. It's going to be a really fun matchup between John Curtis and the car, but give me John Curtis. I think this is a mission, what they're going to do for their head coach. Give me JT. Give me the GOAT to go on that run.
That's the direction I'm kind of starting to lean, and especially the whole dynamic of the winner of a Catholic Curtis quarterfinal feeling like the favorite to go on and win. Mm-hmm. But that's what I said about the Carr Catholic quarterfinal.
Yeah.
Curtis turned that on its head the following week.
Mm-hmm.
So this is such a fun bracket always. I think part of it being that especially prior to last year, the Division I Select was so full of rematches because of the heavy Catholic League of New Orleans contingent involved. And I think you still see a lot of that where you'll run into maybe more rematches in this bracket than any other bracket. And that's tough, especially at the high school level, for these coaches to get the kids' minds right and not take it for granted after having beaten a team 4 weeks ago or whatever it may be. And we'll start to see that extremely early on, including the potential of that Karen Crow-Acadiana matchup where for the second straight regular season, Acadiana wins a 1-point game, but Karen Crow won the playoff game last year. And so how does that shake out? Holy Cross and Jesuit potentially was not quite so close to a regular season game. We'll see, because I do think Manali does a great job with that team. I like Bo Perez, the senior quarterback, and some of the other members of that team. Zyron Forstall, a young defensive lineman that we'll watch for years to come. But a lot of the defensive backs stood out when I saw Jesuit against Ruston. And so watching that one, the potential of one of those Lafayette teams versus Holy Cross in the quarters, programs and coaches that Scott is super familiar with from his stretch at Catholic New Iberia. Not that Catholic New Iberia was playing Acadiana and Karen Crow a ton, but certainly some familiarity there. Part of the reason why I thought Curtis could beat Carr was how well Brother Martin played against Carr in the regular season. So you could get that quarterfinal where Mark Bonis and company could really kind of mix some things up that much further for the Cougars. And on down the list, Rummel, a team that's an 18 seed that has to make a long trip up to Northwood Shreveport in the first round. We alluded earlier because of one of the matchups they had with someone in a previous bracket, but they've been a team that on the right night is as good as anyone in the state.
They had some impressive wins this year. U-High was a win they got.
Yeah.
And so could they potentially go up to Shreveport back-to-back weeks and win and mix some things up? I don't know, but they're certainly a lower-seeded team to watch. And St. Aug, that Catholic League was so tough this year, and so you see them slide down. But you mentioned as talented as anyone, the defensive front can really take over a game. I really like the secondary too.
Yeah.
Just defensively, they can turn some things on its head. But that Curtis team is playing so much better than they were when we saw them lose that game to Holy Cross, and then the following week to Rummel. And if Dagan, Bruno, and the passing game are working the way it worked against Carr in key spots, they're going to be real tough. It's going to be a fun one.
That's going to be a fun one. It's going to be a fun one to watch.
But yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun. This is going to be a really fun Division I Select playoffs, man. It's going to be hard. It's hard to choose. Who the sleepers are, who you think is going to be here, where you think this team's going to go, how far they're going to go. To be honest with you, I could see Rummel not only beating Northwood Shreveport, but I could also see him going back to Shreveport and beating Captain Shreve, which is a very talented team. But I think the thing about Rummel is that we don't know how good they really are, because they'll have one game where they'll beat a team like Curtis or U-High, and then the next week they'll get throttled by Shaw.
Yeah.
So they're kind of those up and down teams. But I think that if they beat Northwood Shreveport, I could really see them being going back up to Shreveport and beat Captain Shreve, making the quarterfinals. Acadiana is a team that I could see making the semifinal. I could see upsetting Holy Cross.
And they can throw the ball when they need to as well. So that's going to make them
They
dangerous.
look really good in summer 7-on-7, and part of the reason probably that Acadiana is a little bit lower on the seeding is just because Caden DeBetto was banged up a good portion of the year.
Yeah.
So now that they're back healthy and hitting their stride, really riding some of the momentum from that Karen Crow game, that was a big statement win for them after some of the ups and downs previously. Yeah, that Acadiana Karen Crow game is going to be. It's always so much fun.
And people forget that Karen Crow one point was the number one seed in Division I Select for a while before they had 2 back-to-back losses. So the number 9 seed is kind of, you got to throw that away, because they're a very talented team, and they could easily beat Acadiana in the second round like they did last year, and then upset Holy Cross in the quarterfinals.
Chance Babineau might get one of those special runs, and he just goes off and has that type of run.
To be honest,
there's not a lot of kids in that 26 class in the state that I like more than Chance Babineau.
Yeah. And I could very well see Brother Martin upsetting Endicott in the quarterfinals. I really do. I think I don't think there's no set in stone per team that you can see going to the Dome. Even Curtis, who I think is my favorite to win the whole thing. It's not set in stone for them to make it the Dome as well. I think there's a lot of teams you could say, well, this team can beat this team because the other team lacks in this area. I mean, there's a lot of great teams. Evenly, there's really no bad matchup for these teams, man, because they're all evenly just that good. I think they're all pretty even. I'm gonna say it's gonna be Holy Cross, John Curtis, and a rematch in the Dome. And I'm gonna see John Curtis pulling out another classic game.
That was a classic the first time go around, so that'll be a heck of a game, and maybe get another type of finish like that.
And these are two teams. Like I know, and the thing is, I don't want to doubt JT Curtis because I've done that. I just did that last week.
We both did it.
JT Curtis and staff, and Dagan Bruno, Tyler Mitchell, and Marlon Proud, and Jason Gabriel made me and Jace look like fools, guys. So I don't want to pick against them.
And Michael Turner.
Right, but then again, I also doubted Holy Cross beginning here. It's like, oh, it's the same old Holy Cross. You know, they'll have a new coach come in. You know, they'll probably win a game or two that they shouldn't win, and that's it because they're Holy Cross. It's what they've been doing for the past 50 years. They haven't won a state title since 1967.
Yeah.
That's also the last time I think they went to the Dome. And then also the last time they won the Catholic League was 2002. That was before both my little brothers were born. So, like, you know, it's been a little while before you know, since Holy Cross has been this good. And also the Sigma run Holy Crosses, they've always had the talent, but they've been never able to fully grasp what they have with all the resources that they got. So that was the Sigma run Holy Cross, but that has changed in just under a year under Coach Wadney. So these are two programs you don't want to doubt at all, guys. Yeah. So, you know, and is there any players that maybe we should watch out for? The players that even though we may be familiar with them, they really haven't got the love that they deserve?
Yeah, I mentioned one earlier, and that's Jacorian Norris from Tioga. Just for as a guy, a senior too. Yeah. That's not getting much love.
And that's another team that can make it run.
Yeah, Tioga is definitely a team because they can easily. I mean, that St. Paul's game is going to be an interesting game, and who knows? Like if Rummel beats Captain Shreve, and you can have a sneaky game in the quarterfinals between Rummel and Tioga, you know, and like we wouldn't even expect it. So that is definitely somebody I'm talking about, and could make a really good run. I was talking about Chance Babineau, and I know Jared's really high on him as a 2026 guy. I know Coach Tony Corville told me that I've coached Kevin Falk. This is the best freshman I've ever coached since Kevin Falk. It's like, okay, maybe I need to see this guy play. Yeah. If you're saying that. So.
And another player I need to mention right now is a sleeper right now in the state, and Barry Remo. Because I think Barry Remo is very key to Catholic success, even though I don't see them going past the quarterfinals because I think they'll lose against John Curtis. If Barry Remo is on fire, it's going to be very hard to beat that Catholic team because we saw that.
That's when their offense is at their best.
Because in the Zachary game, when the reason why their offense wasn't playing as great was because Zachary was tough in the run. But once Barry Remo got going, that's when Daniel Beal and the rest of the offense gets going. So as long as the motor's running under Daniel Beal, the whole Mustang, the Ford Mustang, will keep on rolling, baby. Yeah, he's a very key piece to if Catholic wants to make it back to the Dome and win a state title.
He's been playing probably for about 20 years at quarterback for Catholic.
Yeah. He's a guy that when he was coming in the offseason before his freshman year, Gabe Fertitta and company said watch him, and started referencing some Clyde comparisons of just an undersized guy that was strong and quick and could do some things. So that's a good call with him. The Wright brothers for Catholic. Yeah. Sam Norman was huge in that Zach.
He's become a very good player.
Yeah. With an interception, a blocked punt.
Blair Russo on the defensive line just came. He had a great game.
Yeah, and also he had a huge interception that UI. He seemingly had the game-winning interception because UI.
Yeah.
So he's a big.
That's right.
He can make a lot of big-time plays and big-time moments and big-time games.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some others. Jamarce Plater from Captain Shreve, a 26, who's really good. Kind of an under-the-radar guy. Wherever else, Bonnable, the 20 seed, has a guy, Julian Price, a receiver.
Oh, Julian Price.
Good. Alexandria, My Mingo, and
Mingo's a good
receiver. JT Lindsay, at 25, running back, the Tulans, hoping they can keep in state. Brother Martin the list goes on. Jordan West.
He's been running back a long time.
Car quarterback John Johnson to me fits into that mold we were talking about on the non-select side, where if he and the offensive line in front of him can be ready to hold up their end of the bargain with those fantastic playmakers outside. He's just a really pivotal player in this entire bracket to me in terms of
the
how,
upside's
how
there
they
with
respond.
him.
Yeah.
The upside's definitely there with him too. So that's a kid to definitely watch out for.
Yep, 100%. And that's just about it, guys. We just covered all the brackets. Well, me, Jace, and Jerit have had such a great time talking about what's to come in the playoffs. I know it's a pretty long show, but this is what happens when the playoff time comes around. Sometimes you may need to make things a little bit longer so we can get all the best information to you guys. Again, Grant Chachere, joined here with my co-host, Jace LeJeune of Gridiron Football. Here joined with our special guest, Jerit Roser of Louisiana vs. All Y'all.
Oh, make sure to follow Louisiana vs. All Y'all because
see,
every time I get a commit or something happening, I know because I get Louisiana vs. All Y'all.
Right, exactly. Make sure you when you follow him, make sure you put on these notifications too.
Put on your notifications.
He brings out a lot of great information. He's a valuable asset to our state in terms of high school sports all around, whether it's football, baseball, and basketball. We're pleased to have him on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for coming
Appreciate
on,
it,
man.
Jerit.
Appreciate you.
And also remember, protect the boot.
Boot up.